Look, I figured out how to calm everybody down. To make up for the result against Newcastle, Arsenal simply have to take all of us to Dubai. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name is Elliot Smith, the players need a rest. Too many fixtures in January. They're worn down, too many minutes, too many injuries. You know what? We need a rest. We've had to watch all the games, expend emotion on all the games. I think it's only right that the club reward us with a trip to Dubai. And I'm pretty sure that if the club took all of Arsenal's fans to Dubai, that would calm everybody down. Everybody would behave themselves well in Dubai, I have no doubt. We'd all have as Andrew says, salty meat wanker, serve us some salty meat. And we'd all be feeling good. We'd get tans like Ben White. We'd come back rested and ready. Arsenal go win the league and the Champions League. We'd go win the league and the Champions League of our lives, whatever that is for you. Well, wherever you are, I hope you are thriving and preparing to win the league and Champions League of your life. Spending more time thinking about 5-1 over City and maybe a little less time over the transfer window in the Newcastle game. But you know what? We each do what we can. And so today, unfortunately, we will talk about Newcastle eliminating Arsenal at the semifinal phase of the League Cup. We will talk maybe just a final note on the transfer window closing. Naturally, one of our attackers picking up a bit of a knock in the game right after the transfer window closes, because that's just how the universe works. We'll touch a little bit on Miles Lewis-Skelly being, and I say this advisedly, the single biggest threat to global peace and stability. And we have to think about how we can solve that problem, because there has to be a way. There has to be a way. So we will discuss all of that and a bit on how Dubai can help us and what we need to do to come back rested, ready, and firing. And here to do that is the only man who has all the answers to those questions. They will all be accurate, concise, and essentially answer the concerns you have clearly. And if not, I think there should be a lot of opprobrium directed his way. And his name is Clive. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
Hello, indeed. We did, if you would like to go back in the time machine, a really cool tactical breakdown video over on the Patreon for the City game and discuss the transfer window a bit over there as well. More of the raw emotion of it in the wake of it closing, and tactically broke down the video of the City game. So if you want to return to happier times, that is out there and available to you. Probably going to put something out tomorrow, but that is still in flux a little bit about what that's going to be. So you'll know when it comes out. Let's put it that way. But for now, Clive, let's do first things first, which is just the League Cup semifinal. And I think this was a painful loss, I think, in the manner of it happening, just because it's it's what we call an island game sort of in the United States, in the sense that it's on when nothing else is on. Everybody's watching. There's been a lot of anti-Arsenal sentiment, which we'll come to recently. You're up north in Newcastle, where they were really fired up for this. They have a very long trophy drought they're looking to end. And we're trying to recover a 2-0 deficit. And so I think the job was always going to be a very big mountain to climb. And the 5-1 win at the weekend maybe obscured just how difficult this would be and just how much that 2-0 deficit plays into the hands of how Newcastle would have wanted to play this game. So what do you think about sort of the setup for this game in terms of going in down 2-0 and the mountain that gave us to climb, and why maybe that was perfect for Newcastle, the way they want to play?
Yeah, Newcastle are really efficient in our box. They've got a couple of forwards up there that are not bad, and they seem to stick it in our net.
Is that a tactic, by the way, that we should look into?
We should maybe look at it.
Having forwards and stick it in the back of the net.
Yeah, and when we score 5, we sort of dismiss that, didn't we? But when we don't score, we know what our podcast will look like for the rest of the season, didn't we? When we don't score, we're back to January and the summer. When we do score, we'll just enjoy those wins and don't wonder how we got here. So there's a rhythm set for us, Elliot, to the end of the season. Let's hope we score more than not, right? So so Newcastle are very good at pushing us when they need to push us, but dropping into a nice block when they need to. And the game was probably lost in the first game. It was next goal wins. We didn't score the next goal. We hit the post. They hit the post, goes in. We hit the post, goes around the corner. But I was talking to somebody, I think his name's Rohan, actually, online this morning, and he came up with a point which I've been thinking about. And so there are marker games in our season, shall we say. And the game I often refer to is Bayern Munich. And what did Bayern Munich have on the day? They had 2 strong centre-backs against us, very heavyweight centre-backs, and they managed to really get around us physically, hold a nice sort of mid-block shape. The goalkeeper can look after the ball. And similar to Aston Villa did last year, goalkeeper look after the ball, put pressure on our press, and really get physical with us. What do Newcastle have? 6'5" or 6'7" Dan Burn, 6'5" Botman, Fabian Schär playing, and they play them against us because they want to get physical in that central zone, really get around us. And I feel we struggle with that. You know, even Manchester United with De Ligt and Maguire, although we beat them in the league game, but in the cup game, we did struggle a little bit with that physicality. And I do think it's a weakness of ours, but that's okay. It's a weakness of ours. If you look at the two legs, we've got over 4 XG in the 2 legs, and we haven't scored. So the opportunity was there. But once you give them the game state, they are very good at a solid base and a very springy front door, right? So, and they have a player that unsettles us, and he unsettled us in both legs, and fair play to him. He's a really good player. And Newcastle have been our kryptonite, and they have. We have to accept it. Eddie Howe did something fantastic with Shire in this game, pushed into Rice, didn't allow him to turn around and run, and really got physical around the edges, and they challenged us, you know, and we have to think about how you want to play against that sort of team. I tell you, the first thing you need to do is score first. Just do that. But when we score first, we normally win. Apart from that, you know, that one game, we normally win, right? So it's very important. So Eddie Howe prepares himself, and they focused on this game, Elliot, right? So we focused on Wolves, Girona, City. Well, they were losing to Bournemouth, I think it was, and lost to Fulham. They had this game in their eye line. This was their cup final. This was their moment. They've not won a trophy since I don't know when. And this is their moment. And we are playing in Europe, not quite as fresh as them, and they beat us. I can come up with some reasons, but they beat us. And so for people wondering about the next evolution of Arsenal and what they should look like, this is the game which you should hold as your marker. Now, although I will say mentally, this team was focused on City rather than this game. And that was clear from minute one. You could see the sloppiness, the movements. You could just see it, couldn't you? It was, I said online, I said, you know that last day before you go on a holiday, you're at work, that last day, the wife's at home, she's got all the cases packed, and you talk about what you need on the phone, blah, blah, blah. You're at work, but you're not really at work. You're just there doing the last day before you go away, right? So, and that's what it looked like to me. A team ready to go on holiday. We do a bit, we do what we can, but you know what? I'm going on holiday next day. I really need to be in shape for that. So that's how it looked like to me.
William Saliba's thinking, did I pack that extra bottle of sunblock? And next thing you know, the ball's gone off his head on the Isak, and he's facing it. Damn it! I think I left it in the bathroom. That explains it. To be fair, Martin Odegaard thinking, oh gosh, did I bring the new swim trunks I just bought? Next thing you know, he's missed a sitter. I think it is the case, look, that the one thing Newcastle always brings is the physicality and the intensity.
Yeah.
And you have to, you know, I've always thought it's a little cliche, earn the right to play, but against them, you really do have to show that you're up for the physical challenge.
Yeah.
And one thing that we do very well, we press, we pin teams deep, we make it hard for them to play out. You know, I think because it was 2-0, Newcastle were very comfortable. They went with the back five. They had 2 tearaway forwards up front, Isak and Gordon, and they just kicked it long. And the funny thing is, Clive, like, I think William Saliba is a 99.9% Rolls Royce. But if you ask me where his 0.1% issue is, I'm not sure he judges the flight of balls very well in the air and heads away very well. He headed poorly against City. I think for the deflected chance that Raya got down well to save, he doesn't always handle long straight balls very well. And they turned it into a second ball game, and they were very effective in that respect. And so I think, you know, if they were 1-0, look, we had 27 shots in the first leg or whatever it was, and 3.2 XG or whatever that was. If we had made this, if we come into this game with a lead and they have to play a little more back to front, and again, I realize if my granny had pedals or whatever, it should be a bicycle. Like, but I guess the question is, do you see this as potentially a little bit of a blueprint and a worrying concern, just in the sense of the long straight ball sometimes unsettles us maybe more than you'd like it to, you know?
Yeah, it can do on occasions, but it's all about mental focus, Elliot, because City played some long straight balls to that blonde guy up front, and we managed him completely. You know? And I think it's the long balls in the air that can be a challenge on occasions.
Yeah.
On occasions. Long balls on the ground, Saliba is as good as anybody at reading them, running behind. But if you think about some of those, and not to make excuses, because we could all see that he wasn't at his mental best. He's not. He definitely had his holiday bags packed, right? So, but what he was trying to do, because we were down, he'd normally just run the ball back to the goalkeeper, but he's trying to turn out of trouble. You know, he didn't want to go back because we're like 3-0 down in the tie. So I need to try to do something to keep the pressure on. You know, we rather than go back, slow down, drop in like we do against City, because we're trying to manage a game which we're in control of. In this tie, we've been behind from what they scored 20 minutes into the first leg. Yeah, so we've been behind for a long time, and that affects how we play.
Yeah,
you know, and so I think it's a lot of this was game state related, a lot more game state related. I'm not going to conclude, and neither are you, Elliot, that William Saliba suddenly has got the shakes against Isak. I think he'll be fine. But once we focus on him and say, okay, I know what we need to do with you. We can't have you dancing across our back for picking and choose who you want to be on. We might have to go man to man on you and start pinching your back and start standing on your Achilles and get really physical with people. Right, let them know you're there and start forcing them away from goal. Tear through him a couple of times from the sideline. That's what you got to do to unsettle him. While he's being unsettled, then he's not playing his game. I watched the first game. I thought he was brilliant. In this game, I think he picked our pocket a few times and looked a really good player. And I wouldn't mind him in a red shirt, as would half of the world, right? So, but I'm not going to conclude too much on it because I honestly feel you have to remember sometimes this is the League Cup. And this is not going to suit everybody, but I can only speak how I feel. And I'm not interested in the fourth competition. I'm just not. I almost wish we didn't get here, because if we didn't get here, we'd have been fresher in January. We'd have been better against Brighton. We'd have been better against Villa. I would have been healthier and fresher this month. And that's what I care about. I care about the two bigger competitions. Don't let people on the media say to you, well, they need to win the trophy right now because he's going to be under pressure. If that's your opinion, that's absolutely fine. But I think there are greater measures to measure the club by, the manager by, etc. If that's what you want, than a League Cup. Honestly, it hasn't saved any manager I've been aware of. Right, so that's where I am with it.
Yeah, I think the way I would phrase it, right, and I do get this. Once you're in the semifinal of a competition, you kind of want to go for it and win it, because you're there.
I would have liked
the way
it.
I would say. Yeah, I would say this. No one goes into the season targeting it, and no one comes out of the season using it as the evaluation for the season. That doesn't change and doesn't diminish for anyone who's upset about it, wanted to win it. There were a bunch of Arsenal fans up in Newcastle last night that certainly cared about it and did not see the performance they want. I think this was a game that was really defined by a few high leverage moments that we did not execute, and they did. So there's the Odegaard chance. It's poorly missed. There's the offside goal, by the way, which is an error from Saliba and then brilliant from Isak. There's the actual goal, which is brilliant from Isak. And then there's a Raya mental mistake that leads to a goal. Yeah. And that's the tie. If Odegaard scores the thing I would have liked to have seen, I would have liked to have seen a quieted St. James's Park and a nervy Newcastle trying to navigate the game when the lead was down to 1.
Yeah.
And Odegaard missing didn't give us that. And I think there is, and I want to be careful, right? Because I don't think of myself as an online fan or not online fan. I hate that binary. You're a fan or you're not. But the thing about being at a distance from Arsenal is that the way you tend to judge the opinion of fans is what you have access to, which is the online experience. So I may be misreading this, but it feels like there's some growing frustration with Martin Odegaard, just a little bit bubbling under the surface. Yeah. And I've said this for a long time now. Since Saka went down, I think all eyes fell to him to say, okay, you're our superstar now. Be at the top of your game. Help us survive his absence a bit. And unfortunately, it has coincided with him struggling with his form. I think it is certainly fair to say, at leleast in the final third, the sharpness has not been there. And that is a bad miss. And I think what's weird about the miss, because 6 inches the other way, it's a goal. But it feels a little slashed at. And then a few minutes later, he has an in-swinging cross that goes out for a goal kick that was kind of like overcooked. And it just feels like some of the precision that I associate with him. I think of him as like a Swiss watch. I realize he's not Swiss, but you know what I mean? Like a very precise player in his execution. Some of that cold, calculating precision in the final third feels like it's out of his game. So one miss of a chance that's 6 inches wide of being a goal is not how you summarize a player, but do you have sort of thoughts on where he's at with his game right now in general?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Elliot. I think it's let's take it up a level tactically, shall we say? The City game, which was a little bit more of a pressing game, high pressing game, maybe slightly more off the ball, but we were being praised by every single tactician in the world, right? Holding us an example, our pressing structure, and who was leading that? Martin Odegaard, right? He was the guy that was leading all of that, pointing and clicking where that should go. And we come out there with 5 goals and in a collective manner, and he scored the first one, right? So here we are 3 days later. Game state, 2-0 down, much more of an on-the-ball game, right? So that's the difference. So Arsenal, air quotes, the best off-the-ball team in the world, are now forced to come back from a 2-goal deficit away from home and to try to have an on-the-ball strategy. And on the ball at the moment, without our star man, we don't look so smooth. You know, we don't look so smooth, particularly against physical teams who can afford to kick us in our throats and then substitute that guy because they've got a 2-goal head start, right? They don't really care about the follow through. They don't really care. They're kicking us, and Kieran Trippier is standing over us, telling us about ourselves. So their intention was absolutely clear. We have to decide how much we want it, and that's exactly the question they're trying to ask us. How much do you want it? How much do you want to spend your time in Dubai with a plaster cast on your foot? Do you really want to do that? You know, because we want this more than you, and that is part of the psychological battle of the game. Moving it back to Odegaard now on the ball. I thought he tried. He had our first few chances. We didn't win the game, so we can swing around and compute as to why. And some of his on the ball play lately has been inaccurate and not been as spatially aware as he normally has been. And there is a question mark. And a lot of the focus has been around Kai Havertz, but you look at his numbers, he's actually delivering. You look at Martin Odegaard's numbers, and you could ask yourself, is he delivering? Let's look at the reasons why. The reasons why. Health and fitness is obviously a big part of this. We can all see it. We're not blind. We can see how he's moving or not moving. We're not sure what we're getting on any given day at the moment. And that's where he is. And I think when you lose Saka, as you said earlier, the light is going to shine on your skipper. And what's really, Elliot, in addition to what you said and what I've just said, you look around and see who's stepping up in adversity. And there are other players in the team, until last night, our centre-backs, and particularly Declan Rice, who have stepped up in these moments in time and really said, I'm going to drive this forward. And our skipper's struggling with that a little bit on occasions, not every occasion, on occasion. And I think that's a fair assumption.
I mean, he scored against City, right? So
yeah, we did.
And I think maybe we overlook sometimes how much of football is about partnerships all over the pitch, right? Gabriel doesn't look the same without Saliba. We know that. As much as we love him, we saw what happened when Saliba went down and Rob Holding came in, and suddenly the back four was very mid-table because it's about partnerships. And I think if you look at Odegaard, who was our player of the season last season, Ben White, Kai Saka, Kai Havertz, Martin Odegaard, that pod pretty much played every game January to May. And they really had a preternatural understanding of what they were going to do and how they were going to play the position. And as much as I rate Timber, slightly different. Kai Havertz is still there, but not only is Saka not there, sometimes it's Ethan, sometimes it's Martinelli, sometimes it's Leo, sometimes it's Sterling. Those automatisms, as Arsene famously said, are not there. Now, none of that explains missing a chance. But anyone can miss a chance 6 inches one side of the post, 6 inches the other side of the post. I think it is more the lack of first-time instinctive play at the edge of the final third, inside the box, around the box, that is really the part that's missing. In fact, there was one really nice moment, Clive, before his missed chance, where they played a 1-2 inside the box, and Odegaard got on it and had a blocked shot because Newcastle were defending very deep. I do want to ask you about Mikel just for a second. Do you think tactically there's any regret that we maybe didn't shadow box a little? Like, we played very high. We had our line very high. We let them put Gordon and Isak up there and run races. Could we have, I know it was 2-0 and we had to get 2 goals, but could we have tried to get deeper into this game where we shadow box with them a little bit, make them come out a little bit? Or is this just a case of we missed our first chance, they scored theirs,
Yeah, we were lucky on the offside goal, weren't we? That was really a close
Another
one.
mental mistake by Saliba, though, right? To create that chance. Yeah.
When you see David Raya playing out straight passes out the back, when have you seen that? We're just not at the races, mate. We're forcing things. We're not mentally there. So it's not about ability. It's about your mentality. 5% off, and you start to not hit the ball in the centre, and it goes 1 yard away, and that's it. You're in trouble, right? So that's it. The game is in the head, I'm afraid, mate. It's between the eyes, and we weren't quite there. I think I personally would have tried to shut that crowd up if it was me. I'd have tried to score. How are you going to affect the day? By sitting there, letting them grow in confidence and have their 2-0, or by getting to 2-1, scoring the first goal? I would have tried to score the first goal. The only thing I would have done, and this is maybe hindsight, and I did say it actually, and someone said to me, well, what do you mean? We can't do this. And I said, well, in hindsight, because Sunday was so emotional, so big, for many reasons against City, huge day, a long time coming, there is an emotional price to pay for that. And it's very difficult to say we're going to change the team after you do that. But in my opinion, we should have changed the team. Because you need to bring a different energy into the group. And people said to me, Clive, who's that going to be then? Well, you know what? Mikel Merino has to start. You know?
What's going on with that? Let me stop you with that. I mean, this was a big acquisition. Mikel pushed for him very hard. There's rumor, certainly, that there wasn't universal agreement or consensus inside of the club on that target. Why not Merino? Why has he been so sparingly used? I mean, that is a bit of a head scratcher for me.
Yeah. Hey, look, Mikel's not the only coach who doesn't want to change a winning team. You know, you change the winning team after you do that. People are going to say, well, why didn't you play him? You know, we should have started that team. You know, you can't win, right? But the energy, you could see straight away from minute one. From the moment the short corner messed up, I thought, we're not here. We're doing stupid stuff, right? And then you think we should have freshened this up, you know. And we basically got 3 players we could have put into the starting lineup, which I think are at the right level. We could have started with Ethan, we could have started with Merino, and we could have started with Calafiori. It's not a slight on the other 3 players.
Maybe Jorginho. You know, if
maybe
you want to give
Jorginho. Partey should definitely not played for me. You just got to freshen up with different energy, with a different look. Those players are still on the bench, by the way, and you've got 5 subs. So it's just a little bit of rotation. It's not the end of the world. And just bringing Calafiori, but he bursts into making an impression. So you're going to get a different energy from him. You just are. And when Ethan came on, we all saw his energy, right? So it's just one of those. Hey, look, I'm an expert once you've seen it, right? But I have to say, I would have done that. I would have done that. Now, in my real hindsight thing, this is purely on the game and where it was, I'd have said, right, I don't like being dominated physically, as you know, Elliot, and I would have brought all of the heavy mob out. I'd have gone Merino, Rice, and Partey, and I'd have gone, right, let's fight with you in here. Let's fight with you in here. I would have gone Calafiori. I'd have gone as big as we possibly could, and I would match them physically. But again, this is our 4th competition. This is not really what we're focused on, to put that level of danger amongst us. And so I thought we were dominated.
You know what's interesting too? I mean, people are going to roll their eyes because they're so frustrated about our goal scoring capability because of transfer stuff and all that. But corners have been an important weapon for us. And look, if you don't have the absolute elite upper echelon attacking talent, we've found ways to manufacture goals in other ways. And one way is corners. Since we've lost Bukayo, the right-sided corners have basically stopped being a factor. Ethan's delivery is okay. It's not Bukayo. And then Leo's has been terrible. Odegaard's has not been consistent. In fact, I think it's telling. Our first corner was from the right side. What did we do? We played it short, and Martinelli gives it right away to Newcastle to create a counter. And that's not picking on Martinelli. It's the point that we have found corners as a weapon that we can use to overcome some of the things missing in our team, but we're down to sort of 50% corner power now because the corners from the right are not as effective. Look,
and Newcastle are a big team. I remember watching them at the Emirates. Yeah. And at the time, they looked really big on the pitch. They had Joel Linton on the day. Add that into this group, they had Joel Linton. And they also had Lloyd Kelly running up and down on the sideline. And he's 6'5" as well, warming up. And I looked at them, I thought, crikey, they're bigger than us. You know, I did see something flash up on the TV. They've only conceded from 1 corner this season. And
Makes
so it
sense.
was a day to try different things because they were set up for it. They're ready for it. And they did well. Honestly, hat tip to them. I don't like them. I don't like how they are. They probably don't like us, right? But they played as well. They deserved to get through. They did their job in both boxes, in both legs, and we didn't score in only 180 minutes of football. You got to look at yourself, how you can learn lessons to going forward, and you got to raise your hat to them who focused on this and they got their result.
And look, it's such reductive and obvious commentary, which is why I'm going to say it. But the tie was lost in the first leg, and the excitement of the win we had at the weekend maybe led us to think more was here for us. I mean, look, if Odegaard scores that goal, maybe it gets interesting. The reality is overhauling a 2-goal lead against a team that really does like to defend as deep as it can and spring counters on you, you set yourself up for the worst possible scenario, right? There are certain teams in particular you don't want to play down 0-2. And I'd put Newcastle very high up that list. Look, the other sort of final thing to tease out of this game, I think a bit, and by the way, I think you could see psychologically the edges fraying because there were moments where it started to boil over a little in this game. And I like that our players have fight in them. I like that Kai has fight in him. I like that.
Yeah,
but the edges are fraying a bit. And I do wonder, Kai looked particularly worked up. This was not a good Kai game, candidly. I thought his touch was very loose at times. He looked a little clunky. He fell over the ball a few times. Miles Lewis-Skelly had a moment where he did brilliantly, spins away and strides out and plays it to Kai in the channel. And Kai just loses it cheaply. And up against Isak, it's an unfortunate reality. The window closes. We didn't get an attacker. Martinelli gets injured. So it's like the perfect storm of people being frustrated. And then your number 9, who doesn't wear number 9, but you get the idea, has an off day. And theirs just shows his quality. I mean, the offside goal, the way he took that's top class. The way he sprints away from Saliba to take the shot with the left foot for their goal. Look, they get lucky. He crashed it off the post. It falls right to their player. But his class really shone through in this game. And that contrast of Isak versus Kai, unfortunately having an off game right after the window closes when we knew we needed an attacker. It's like the worst possible timing for that. But just as a final thought on this game, I mean, was that kind of the unfortunate main story of this is the quality of that guy, Isak, up there kind of showing us where we need to go next to go the next level up?
Yeah, well, there's not a fan that wouldn't think he's a really good player. And, he's a sort of player that could play with Kai up front, right?
Yeah,
and that's the difference,
that.
right?
Ooh,
And
that would be fun.
that is, with one facilitating for the other, right? So that's I can see that in the future, no problem at all. Hey, look, I think there are problems in central defence for definite on the day. Weren't quite at their absolute best. I didn't think that we were super sharp in midfield. Took a time to warm up in the central midfield areas. Ended it better to look after our reputation. In wide areas, Martinelli had a rough start, got off the pitch. Ethan came on, looked bright, but was sent into dark alleys.
Mhm.
Trossard, I think he's been really good recently, but he suffered a bad foul on him which slowed him down a little bit, and they got him off the pitch, which tells you what they were
So did
thinking.
Odegaard, by the way. He got his foot, I think, stepped on as well.
And that's it. And this is what I would do. I'd look at them two. What do you ever think? What do your opposition coach do? Get after them. Leave one on them. Let's see where they are. Right? And with Kai, I will say to you now, the 2 players that came out with the most credit for me, people might not agree with me, were Kai and Declan Rice. You know why? Because if I was on the pitch, I'd play like them. It's not my day. We're not going to win, but I'm not hiding. And you're going to feel me. I'm going to push you around. I'm going to foul you. I'm going to get into you. And I'm not disappearing. And then you're going to know I'm here. We're going to take our licks. We're going to get beat, but I'm not disappearing. And I really like their attitude. So I think there are people that I've got more concerns about than them two. And I just wish we had more energy around them to overcome Newcastle. A very good Newcastle today.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing we should try to keep in mind, just briefly, I know we're all pulling our hair out about needing attackers and we're not powered up and we should have signed someone in the window. And of course we should have. Arsenal are second in the league in goals scored. Only Liverpool have scored more. Newcastle have Isak. They've scored 7 fewer goals than us. Okay. In the same number of games. So, that, again, none of that means we don't need an Isak or we don't need a good player, but you can throw the baby out with the bathwater sometimes and say our players are crap and their players are great. And then you look and you realize, well, our players are higher in the table, have more wins, have more goals, concede fewer goals, like, are we're third in the Champions League. So again, not to say this was good, but just to say, I think the hardest thing to do in sport, any sport, if you're a real true fan and you really care, is to zoom out, because every game is existential when you're a supporter. You really care, and especially when it's a semifinal, and especially a team you don't like, and especially when they're physical and they're talking a bunch of crap and they're talking in really ugly ways about your 18-year-old academy player. You want to do them. And they've gotten one over on us quite a few times. But I will say this. I was at the Emirates last January when we absolutely curb stomped them. And I will be at the Emirates this May when we will absolutely curb stomp them again. I can promise you that is coming. That doesn't fix this, but that is coming. And, just a final word about maybe the transfer window, Clive, and the striker situation. Kai Havertz, for me, is a very good player who does very good things for us. And I do think Arsenal need another striker of very high quality. Having said that, if I look at United, who went Højlund, Xerxes in consecutive windows and have them on the bench in a loss at home to Palace, I look at Chelsea, who bought Nkunku. I look at Liverpool, who bought Darwin Nunez, who, even though I really do rate him, there's no world where you can say he's been value for the money they spent. He doesn't start most games. He was supposed to be their superstar striker. Dominic Solanke is arguably the best striker that moved any of the bigger clubs, if you still consider Spurs a big club. And that's pretty underwhelming. Obviously, City have Haaland, but they haven't found another attacking player that's really made much of an impact for them since Haaland came in. And none of this is to say, just because something's hard doesn't mean you don't have to do it. Buying strikers is hard. You still have to buy them. Buying wingers is hard. Just because Chelsea wound up with Mudryk and United wound up with Anthony doesn't mean you can just say, we better never buy one. But you see my point, right, Clive, which is that's a position that is hard to solve for. And if you get it wrong, it can be quite damaging. And so for the people that don't think Kai's the answer, for example, I would certainly say this. I'd rather have him than Højlund, Xerxes, Nkunku, Darwin, some of these other players that have had big money spent on them. So hard position to solve, isn't it? And again, needs to be done, but it's gonna probably take a very big amount of money being laid out, and it's gonna mean a roll of the dice. The club is eventually going to have to roll the dice on this position.
Yeah, I think in this tie, I think defensive instability was just as big an issue as our missed chances, right? So, and that's why I'm always, me and my defenders, from that base we can play. If we start conceding soft goals like we did in both these games, although they were welcome. The first goal at the Emirates, come on, man, long free kick, he bubbles 3 times in the box and they score. That doesn't belong at where we are normally at our defensive levels. That told me we weren't focused. We were just not focused properly. So we all, can we talk about this from the basis that we all would like 1 or 2 forwards? Can we just have this conversation? Because it's a conversation of violent agreement. But sometimes when we're explaining something, they think that we don't agree. We all want a forward. We all want, I wouldn't mind 2, and we're probably going to get 2 in the summer. A wide player and a central player. That's what's going to happen. But it is difficult. But what's also difficult, I think it's important, Elliot, to remind ourselves, if we do get it wrong, the ramifications are quite serious.
Yeah.
Because we live in a world right now where there are some people listening to us today thinking, crikey, Clive and Elliot have calmed down pretty quick. But we just have a view around the 4th competition, right? They're still raging. There are some people listening today are still on the trains coming back down, right? Who don't feel as sanguine as I do. And they want to see these forwards come in. And they're angry about it, right? But if I'm inside the club now, I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to overspend for a 29-year-old. That's going to stop me buying the player that I really want that sustains this project for the next 3 years, right? And that's key. And if you don't get it right in the next 3 years, you know what happens? People lose their jobs. It's as simple as that. We live in a world now where you can't lose 2 games in a row. It's a referendum on you and your job and your role, whether you be in the board or whether you be part of the first team coaching staff or one of the first team players. You started talking about Martin Odegaard today. He's lost some key people around him. He's lost some form. And there is things being spoken about out there. And he is the golden boy skipper, right? And I'm not saying no one's beyond criticism. I'm not saying that. But this is why it's important to make the right decisions. You shouldn't be scared of your own shadow also. But I don't see 100 names being thrown at us because people are also quite smart to recognise the market and recognise the drought that exists in forward areas at the level that we need to buy in the market. And there are names which we all know that either we can't get because we can't afford because they're going to push the prices up, or we're having to wait to when the real market is, which is the summer. The January market is actually made for the situation that we were in, where we had to react, but the prices were not reaction prices. They're project prices, and they're project altering prices. And they took a decision. They took a risk. They're taking that risk. It's clear. It's clear. And now we're going to have 2-3 months of watching football, watching energy sap out of the player's battery, and wondering if they can play a week or 3 days later. And every time they go down clutching their ankles, we're going to be saying, there you go. We've taken a risk and look what's happened. And that's a shame. That's where we are. But that's where we are. So get used to it, man. You've got a lot of pods coming up on this.
Yeah, the easiest thing to do is take a position and scream it as loud as you can and drown out the possibility that any other position is right. Where I struggle is that my brain doesn't work like that. And I am literally stuck between two poles of thinking. One pole, how on earth did we not sign an attacker in January? How have we failed to do that? Knowing how thin we are, knowing how our season still has potential promise that could be thrown away by not having the players we need. Because we know we didn't get past Bayern, because we didn't have the power and the energy in our legs when we needed it at the key part of the season. And we're going to fail in the same way this season. It was so predictable. That thought, that message is in my head. I'm not an idiot. I mean, maybe I am, but I still get that. Then there's the other side of my head that's like, we were very, very good last season and went on a run, the likes of which this club has never gone on. And you know what? We used like 4 players in attack, and they all played every game. And if Heung-Min Son finishes a 1v1, we're calling it the second best domestic season in the history of Arsenal Football Club, with 89 points and a record ever goal difference. And the fact of the matter is, and I will say this, and it is not excuses, but I do want people to just think on this for a second. If you swap our injury issues this season with Liverpool, so they have our injury issues and we have theirs, what do you think the table looks like? The only reason I ask it is not to forgive the club for not doing the business they needed to or say we have all the players we need to, but it is simply the fact that sometimes the least satisfying answer is also the very obviously correct one, which is we lost our skipper for 2.5 months and we lost our best player for most of the season. And there is simply no world where you are as good after that, even if you sign someone. But again, the other side, the other polarity of my brain says, as much as that may be true, by not signing someone in January, by not finding the answer, we have exposed our season to unnecessary risk when there were very clear ways to address it, and we failed to do it. We wanted to do it in the summer and failed. We wanted to do it in January and failed. Mikel Arteta himself, by the way, said we did not achieve what we wanted in the market.
Yeah.
So if you're saying, Elliot, how can you say we failed? Our manager said we did not achieve what we wanted to in the market.
But
so Clive,
he also
I think
said, sorry, mate. Sorry.
Yeah.
He also said that he praises the discipline within the club. And
Yeah.
so, sometimes to do nothing is better than to do something that's incorrect, right? So
look down the table. Who's 14th? Who's 13th? Manchester
and
City.
he's talked about it. Sorry, mate.
Yeah.
Amrin spoke in his latest press conference saying, we don't want to make the mistake that we've made in previous windows. He literally said that, and that's why they're not adding to their attack this January, right? So, So we all know we have a depth here. And I think what worries me is we're all getting the explainers now as to why we didn't do anything. There's a few details in there. You read these things better than me, so I'll just try it out on you. Mm-hmm. But there was a situation where Villa seemed to have approached us about Ollie Watkins. Mm-hmm. And we looked at it. We had a number around it, and we gave that number. And they also had a competing bid for John Duran, and they chose to pivot to John Duran when that deal got more serious. But within that, I asked myself, because Ollie Watkins was the one that I was thinking, that might happen. That's the one. We can live with that. We can live with that one. But what if Villa didn't go forward to us? What was happening? What was the names that maybe we're not aware of? So if Villa didn't approach us for Ollie Watkins, who were we going to get? I can explain why Ollie Watkins didn't work out because of the fact Villa weren't going to lose 2 strikers in one window. I can explain it, but what was the plan?
Well,
And so for people who are concerned, I think that's a valid question to ask, don't you?
yeah, of course. Of course. And by the way, like, football can put you in a weird position because if we had signed Nico Williams on deadline day, can you imagine the energy inside of the club and the enthusiasm? He has 1 league goal this season. Now, that doesn't mean he's not good. But what I'm saying is, if we could have gotten Sesko, we could have gotten Nico Williams. This is why I have some sympathy. I don't know if those guys make you better. I hope they are. And again, I want to be clear, just because you don't know who the players are, you have to do it. This is the paradox. If you get it wrong, it can sink you. You still have to go do it. It's very hard. There aren't players that are clearly going to fix what's broken, if you consider anything broken, and yet you still have to do it. And like the easy answer, go get Isak. Sometimes that, might as well go get Mbappe. What if he's 150 million on 500 grand a week? There's a point at which you can't do it. So I think where I land on this is we did not achieve our goals in the market in the last 2 windows. And that is a failure that has to have repercussions. And those repercussions are probably going to be on the pitch, unfortunately. And yet, I would rather we do nothing than buy mediocre players, because if you buy mediocre players, you know what? You become a mediocre team. And here's the funny thing, right? Marino. You buy a Marino and you have all the good reasons why he's going to help you. And then you get into the part of the season where it really matters and you don't want to use him. You loan Sterling because you had to get someone in. Then you get to the part of the season where it really matters. And you know what? You don't want to use him. So now you're in the worst scenario where you've got players. You're paying them money. You used up transfer bandwidth and resources on those players. And when push comes to shove and it really matters, you won't use them. And that is a really big problem. When Manchester United have to kick off a game at home to Palace and their biggest 2 attacking signings of the consecutive summers are on the bench, that's not where you want to wind up. And I would have loved to get Ollie Watkins and the Ollie Watkins.
Yeah.
Ollie Watkins.
Ollie Watkins.
Ollie Watkins, because I think the error bars around him were very small. Whether you like the idea of signing someone 29 or not, Ollie Watkins comes in and he's going to play at a pretty, the level. You know what I mean? Whereas a Sesko and Nico Williams, they could be superstars for us. They could be whatever. Ollie Watkins I liked because I think if he comes, we have pretty good predictability about the level we're going to get. So look, it didn't get done. It's a lot of relitigating old things. We wind up playing a Newcastle with Isak up top while we have Kai up top, and everybody's going to make the comparison, especially on a night when Kai was not at his best and Isak looked very, very good. But now we have these 10 days to get rested, get fit, and think about how we navigate the rest of the season with the players we do have available. And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the Miles Lewis-Skelly situation a little bit so we can pivot to that. And a good way to pivot is to mention that, by the way, the Manscaped face trimmer thing has a pivoting head. Is that a good pivot? It's not the best pivot. But if you go to manscaped.com, use promo code ArsenalVision, you'll get 20% off free shipping. 20% off free shipping on really good products. Here's the thing. We joke around about shaving your privates. Most people, I think, probably do that. They do it. So then the question is, what tools are you going to use to do it? And the lawnmower is the best tool I've ever had for doing it. I can do it in the shower. It's got a long battery life. It's got an LED light. It's got skin-safe technology. It's got the foil blade now, so you can go completely smooth if that's the way you want to do it, without the risk of some nicks and cuts and things that you certainly don't want down there. They have the beard trimmer, the hedger, which is got a flywheel where you can spin it and get to 20 different lengths that you want. You can shave your face with the electric razor. All of these have long battery lives, so you have 20 hours, I believe, of battery life with that. So the tools are good quality. The battery life is long. The blades are skin-safe technology, LED lights, all the things you need to get the job done with high-quality products. So if you care about trimming hair, whether it's in your nose, on your face, in your private area, these are the tools to use. Go to manscaped.com, use promo code ArsenalVision, get 20% off and free worldwide shipping. Manscaped.com, promo code ArsenalVision. Do it now. And NordVPN. So look, I think this is the one that I find the easiest to talk about because it's the one that I think the most people listening have used. We do have a promo code. It's very simple. It's nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. That's nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. And that is going to give you a huge discount off your NordVPN plan and 4 additional months on top, completely risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee. You put the app on your phone, your tablet, your computer. Very easy. Boom, app installed. You click the region you want to browse in, and now the geo-locked video that you weren't able to watch, in 2 seconds, you're watching it. The match review of the day, you're watching it. The football that you're able to watch when you're home, but when you travel, you can't, boom, you can watch it. Shows that come out earlier in other countries. There's a show I love, but the new season came out in another country before it came out here. NordVPN lets me watch it right when it comes out. And there's threat protection as well. And if you're a football fan, you're on streams. Streams don't always come from the most, let's just say, safe and secure places. So use NordVPN. NordVPN.com/ArsenalVision. Huge discount off your Nord plan. 4 additional months on top. Completely risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee. That's NordVPN.com/ArsenalVision. Do it now, Clive. Is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Nailed it. Okay. So I want to tackle this topic, and then we can touch quickly on what we want from this team coming back rested and ready. But the Miles Lewis-Skelly thing is a weird one. And maybe not weird, very, very easy to explain maybe. But let's just think about what happened. Erling Haaland lost his rag in the game at the Etihad. He scored a goal. He threw the ball at, or he didn't score. He threw the ball at Gabriel's head. Acted like a maniac. Got into fights with Jesus and our manager. And then Miles Lewis-Skelly, who's a young up-and-coming player who, let's face it, if you are a City player, you know all the Arsenal players. Pep Guardiola's drilled it into you. He disrespects him, saying, who are you? I don't even know you, right? Just a way of dismissing him. Which is very disrespectful. And in the return, the opposite fixture at the Emirates, where Arsenal win emphatically, Miles Lewis-Skelly scores the first goal of his young career. A left-back, burgeoning superstar, 18-year-old boy, who, by the way, could be exactly what the England team need. And he gives a little banter back for a player that was pretty disrespectful in the other fixture. And subsequently, the narrative about him, you have Talk Sport DJs saying he should have his leg broken, like Alfie Haaland did. You have people saying it's disrespectful, that it shouldn't be in the game, that he needs to wind his neck in. I am rarely astonished by the depths to which mainstream media and tabloid journalism will sink. But this one has really hit me. This is an 18-year-old boy breaking through. Should be the highlight of his career, the highest moment of his life. He's finally made it. He's announcing himself. And an English boy, by the way, so he can play for England in a position they need. And this is the treatment he's getting in the mainstream media. And Clive, I think it's an important one just to touch on, because for me, it's been really distressing to see that reaction.
Yeah, it's a tough one. The first thing to say, it's not all the media that believe in this way. There are some aspects of not even realizing what they're saying. And when you say 18-year-old boy, we have to say it's an 18-year-old black boy. That also has connotations of what it really means. And there is a tendency, can we say, in some quarters, to make sure that, and I hate to talk about this stuff because I'm black myself, and I feel as though I have to talk about it, and I know everything to say, but I don't want to be defined by it, right? But really, the young man's being defined by it, and it's something that black people have to go through throughout their lives and upbringing. There's a moment in time when you are not allowed to step out. You're not allowed to have a certain personality. Could you imagine some of Ian Wright's goal celebrations in today's era of social media, how they would have been received? I wonder if he would have been allowed to be the same individual. And it is a shame, right? So I'm not going to call out every single issue, but we just think back to this. And I've said this before, so I'll stay along things I've said before. I've always felt Arsenal's perception as a club has been almost like the foreign club in the league. And a lot of it started from Wenger's time. He was the first foreign manager to come in with his new phony ways and eating greens and stopping everyone having their tomato sauce and their beers, etc. And he changed things, right? And he changed things not only from a cultural side of things to globalize the club, but he changed things on a play style side of things. And once he'd won everything, and then we had to go to the stadium and we went small and we started tippy-tapping the ball around, people got after us to say, we're not having this. We need to stop this. And they did, right? A few broken legs later, that's what happened, right? We were stopped. We were stopped on the pitch, and we've always been seen as a slightly bit of an outsider club, right? So, but within the club, we have a very inclusive culture, a very diverse culture. It's very much a club for everybody, and that culture sometimes I feel is at odds with some of our right wing press. I'll be honest with you, and some of those very teams that Wenger had that was doing quite well against some of those northern teams in particular. Some of those prominent people that played in those days are now prominent people in the media, and so they have a view of Arsenal. Right? And I don't blame them. It's their view of Arsenal. We were the enemy. But we were the enemy. And we're certainly not part of the establishment. And so we are potentially a threat to the establishment if we keep playing well. And so I do feel sometimes our outward perception is challenging. But those same people have massive influence, have influence to the authorities in the game, have influence to referees in the game, and have influence to the online way of viewing Arsenal Football Club. So what do we do? It's very difficult in a changing world, in a changing political landscape, which is very much moving towards the right, shall we say. We have to hold our position, hold our culture, and make sure, and this is what I said, the other day I said about we have to embrace who we are. I think we have to really embrace who we are as a club and say, you know what, this is the way it's going to be. We're not going to change people's opinions. This is the way it's going to be. Let's embrace who we are. Let's not be afraid to be who we are. Let's not be afraid to celebrate when we win. I know people are trying to take the joy away from us when we win 5-1. Suddenly we have a problem when we win 5-1, and it's like, it's crazy. But if you get yourself wrapped up into this, you're not going to enjoy anything. That's exactly what's happening. Now, we're not perfect. We lose games. We make bad decisions. We don't buy strikers. We make bad substitutions. We pick the wrong teams like everybody else does. But we're doing it our way. We're doing it the Arsenal way. And we mustn't forget what we saw on Sunday when a 17 or 18-year-old stuck it in their net. And they're both going to play for the country. And if we keep doing the right things and developing people the right way with the right values and make sure that the people within the club, in the ground, support the club in the right way with the right values, which they already do. I mean, it was unbelievable on Sunday. If we keep doing our thing and doing it well and keep getting better at it, that's all that really matters. It really does, because otherwise these people are going to suck the joy out of it for you. And it's very difficult to ignore it. I don't ignore it. And I've got things I want to say, way more I just said just now. I'm also conscious I love my football. I love it. And I don't want them to take it away from me, and that's what's happening at the moment. So even to the point where a young kid, 18 years of age, just broke through into the Arsenal first team, had 6 or 7 starts, and he's been labelled, he's been called a villain, he's been sent off incorrectly already. There is just no quarter given. He's done nothing. Done nothing in the game yet. Well, he's not won a trophy yet. He's 18 years of age. We should be thinking, how many times does this happen? It's really an extraordinary story, and there's others around the corner waiting to happen, not just at Arsenal, but other clubs. It's fantastic what's happening in the game. We should be celebrating that, not finding a reason to push it down, put it in its place, make sure you behave and conform in a certain way. I find it so disappointing, but keep your heads up. Keep supporting these players, because they're going to need our support. In our Arsenal world, they're going to need it.
Yeah, and look, I don't have a lot of standing here, so I want to be careful, but I just want to share my thoughts on it. I'm not saying they're right, and I don't want to prescribe them to anyone, but I just want to share my thoughts on it, Clive. Because, first of all, this really hurt me in a way I wasn't expecting to be hurt. I don't mean me personally, but hurt me for this young man. Because he is 18. I am a parent. So I'm thinking about raising young people and how to raise good young people. And by all measure, everybody says this is a good young person, right? A really good young person should be the absolute pinnacle of his life to date, announcing himself to the world this way, dreaming of an England call-up. Everybody who knows him inside the club talks about his character. You go on social media and there are people saying, I hope he gets his ankles broken. He's got a bad attitude. What's the demonstration of that? What is the bad attitude? Because I want to ask you something. How many of those people said the same thing about Neil Maupay's attitude when he did Madison's celebration at Tottenham Stadium? No one. No one said that, right? There are a number of examples of other players having a little banter, having a little fun. Jamie Vardy. Where's the criticism for Jamie Vardy? They'd say, oh, he's a senior player in the game. He's won things. Okay. We can go back and look at younger players that have done it. Grealish. Grealish has done some things, by the way, that deserve a program. I don't want to go too deep in it. You can Google it. It's free. Right? How's he talked about? How is Foden talked about? How is Raheem Sterling talked about? How is Marcus Rashford talked about? For buying their mother a house, for helping feed young children. So I am a person who does not want to go to issues of race where other issues will answer the question. But I also don't want to be a person who sticks my head in the sand and refuses to acknowledge those issues, because we should be honest with ourselves. And when someone says that he has a bad attitude, he's a bad kid, I hope he gets his legs broken. What is that based on? What? Help me understand. Now, look, there is certainly the case that sometimes winding up Arsenal fans is a good way to make money. And I acknowledge that mainstream media is dying. We have communities like this because it is not delivering for us what we want. And they are trying to be noticed in any way they can be noticed. But I do think that there's another phrase that comes to mind, and that's implicit bias. Because not everything has to be overt racism, meaning I hate a person for their skin color and I'm going to say things about them because of that. It can simply be that at a subconscious layer of your being, you analyze things slightly differently for a person of one race than you might another. Not because you are overtly racist, but because there is bias. And by the way, bias operates at all levels in all areas of our life. Sometimes that bias is important, right? It goes back to the natural, innate layers of our being that help protect us when we were hunter-gatherers and all that, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to demonize, but I think when we don't identify these things, we allow it to permeate the culture and become very toxic and dangerous. And so I would simply say that the way he is being spoken about, the desire to see his ankles broken, the desire to call him a villain, to say he has a bad attitude, when there's simply no indication of that, when his celebration against City was provoked by the very player he gave it back to a little bit. Don't we want to see players showing character, giving it back? Isn't this what the Premier League wants? Stories that aren't about refs, but about rivalries, about mighty Manchester City being humbled, literally and figuratively, and their big player who gave it to Arsenal getting a little back. These should be celebrated stories. A young up-and-coming English talent who is exciting for every single radio show and stream in mainstream media in England should be, are Arsenal about to unleash the two biggest future England stars? That should be the celebration. And yet we're having a different conversation. And I struggle to find explanations for why other than the one we've gone to. And I know there are a lot of people that don't like that answer being given, but I think it is really important to call it out when you are concerned that it is operating, because if you allow it to operate silently, then it can proliferate. And that's, all, what do they say? All evil men need to succeed is for good men to say nothing. And so we must, Clive, say something about this, because this 18-year-old boy is being torn down at the apex of his young life for
at the start
nothing.
Of his young,
yes.
At the start of his career.
Yes.
He's just starting out, and he's already got a label around him. And wow, after 6-7 games, it's incredible, right? So,
can you imagine, by the way, Clive, trying to build a career in the Premier League and all of the difficulty and outside external forces that can push on you? Like, think about, and this is why, again, race does matter. Imagine a young 18-year-old white player, all the challenges on him, all the pressure on him, trying to make it in his career. Now imagine, just because his skin color is different, in addition to all those pressures, he has to also deal with the entire national media tearing him down for a goal celebration. It's hard enough to make it in football without having that extra hate put on you,
I think so. We've made a conclusion here. It's very difficult to prove, but it's just a feeling based on the broader picture around things that race is a part of this. And I almost don't like using those words. That's why I prefer the biases. But you heard me say this before, that sometimes, well, not sometimes, a lot of the time, that black families have to have what we call the talk with our kids. And this is what we're talking about. There will be a time where you'll reach a challenge, when you will be seen differently. And it may not be overt, it will just be the way you're reacted to. Something will happen. So this is how you have to behave in those situations. And I've spoken about it before, the talk, and no doubt Miles is having those talks right now within the club, because he would have to have an accelerated program of learning due to the fact that his football career has accelerated. And the same for Ethan as well. They've gone from under 21's Boreham Wood to scoring against the champions of England for the last 4 years at home in front of the watching world. And do you think that's going to be easy to cope with? So these people saying these things flippantly and irresponsibly, they've forgotten what it was like to be an 18-year-old footballer. And by the way, they have been 18-year-old footballers, and we haven't, Elliot, at that level. We haven't. They just need to think sometimes before they speak, to give people a chance to grow their careers. So I'm sure Arsenal have got their arms wrapped around him, and they're making sure he's got a protective state around him emotionally, and not just him but others as well. And this is part of their upbringing. This is part of their growth as a football player, as a young professional. They've got to be prepared for this, not just them but other young professionals as well. It's a shame we have to talk about this, but I hope we covered it right. And I recognise that not everyone will agree, and we're probably being not everyone will agree with us, but I do think it's a topic worth speaking about, and I do think there's a broader conversation about Arsenal's cultural position in the game and how we're perceived and how we need to behave within that structure which has been presented to us in the online media world. And it's just a change, right? It's coming our way. It's a change. All we can do is focus on getting those players in so we can win and change the narrative to be something which is far more pleasant, so we can be far more competitive and win over a longer period of time and sustain something that can really be pleasurable for all of us. Until that moment comes, we have to wear it. We have to wear it like we did last night. But let young people build their careers. Yeah. Just let them build their careers. That's all. Let them build their careers. Not even 10 Premier League starts. Let him build his career before you pick him apart. I think that's the least we could ask for.
Not much more to say to it other than, for anyone who thinks, by the way, taking this to a place it shouldn't go, or this doesn't exist in the way you think, I just ask you to look at another player in our own team. One of the nicest, by all accounts, best character people in our team, Bukayo Saka. What happened to him when he missed a penalty for his country? Did people just say, "Oh, you're shit football"? No. 4 million monkey emojis in his Instagram replies. Is that just a coincidence? People think that's a cute animal? No, it's racism. It is racism. And it is a reaction that he received because of the color of his skin. And he's been through it. Now, the good thing of him being through it is he's a voice who can help Miles cope with it and what he's going to go through, and Ethan and what they'll go through. But it does no one any good, no matter how painful it is for us to accept that this is still operating at this level. It does no one any good to pretend it doesn't. So while I certainly think there's some people who are critical of Miles who don't mean it in a racial way, like that, by the way, that is totally a possibility.
Yeah.
I think that the overwhelming reaction, and when you start scrolling social media and see Newcastle fans saying, "I hope he gets his ankles broken, he's got such a bad attitude," based on what? Well, I think we know what's operating there, whether you want to call it a particularly pointed word or you just want to call it bias. It's something that we have to push back against, and I certainly don't think being quiet about it, Clive, helps. And I appreciate your perspective. I appreciate your openness and willingness to talk about it. I appreciate people giving us some grace and some room to discuss what is a hard topic, and a topic that I know a lot of people come to this part of their life, sport, to avoid. But when it intersects with sport, it would be, I think, irresponsible not to discuss it and to let it operate in darkness and thrive and proliferate in darkness. So we don't want to do that. To shift gears and lighten things up a bit, the club gets a much needed break. Probably not as long a break as they'd like. But there's a break, a chance to go to Dubai. There are players that need it. Certainly Kai Havertz will be one. I think Martin Odegaard is another. Hopefully Bukayo Saka is getting ever closer to maybe come back. He is going with the team to Dubai, which is good to hear. I still think maybe March sometime is an optimistic viewpoint on him. But as we sort of draw a line under this portion of the season, and you look at where we are in the table and you look at what's going on in the Champions League, I've seen a lot of people sort of react to the Newcastle game as like, season over. Well, the season is very much not over. And do you think that just getting some energy back in the legs, some togetherness, a break from the endless drumbeat of fixtures will help? Because I think this is the key, Clive. And I think, who was it? I want to say it was one of the Barca players. Who was it? Forgive me for not remembering, but he made a point about the fixture congestion. He said, all you do is rest, recover, and play, rest, recover, and play. You don't get to train.
Arteta said that, actually. Those exact words. Yeah.
And so this is a chance to train, to work on some new routines, to work on those automatisms and those partnerships, to not only, we think of it as rest, they can get fit, but they can train. They can finally train again. And we're going to get to a part of the season now, Clive, where like between games, it's not just rest, recover, play, but some prep time, some training time. And I think that can and will probably make a pretty big difference for us.
Yeah, exactly. When you're just resting and playing, you're not building your body. You're not making it more robust. So you can't do the heavy weight session because you've got to rest for the next game. So you're not preparing your body to be quicker, to be stronger, to be more balanced, do all that core work, etc. So you're just playing. And we've had 11 games in 36 days. That's incredible. And that includes an extra time game as well against Manchester United where we went to 120 and penalties, right? So, and I don't know about you, mate, but I could see it against Newcastle, couldn't you? You could.
Yeah, of course.
There was some tired minds out there on that pitch, and so there is an opportunity to freshen minds up. You know, I didn't see that against Man City; those tired minds. I didn't see it. You know, I absolutely saw something completely special just 3 days sooner. So we do need this break. I think we've got a lot on this break, though. Everyone thinks we should come back and win every single game, but I think. You have to realise that we are still a little bit short of firepower, regardless of that, and that's not going to change. And the real reason is Bukayo Saka will come back. It's going to take him. His return to play won't be immediate, and we've lost Gabriel Jesus for a calendar year, right? And that's a loss that allows other people to stay fresh, and he can have impacts like he was doing before he got injured. So, no holiday is going to fix all of that, I'm afraid. But boy, is it needed. You know, and I actually think some of the fans need it as well. A little bit of disconnection won't do us any harm, just to get some perspective. Because it's been a really tough start to the season. Start to 2025. But there is a chance now, and because we beat Wolves, and because we beat City, we have a little inkling that we're still in the room. If Liverpool do drop some points while we are sunning ourselves, we come back with different energy. I was hopeful that we'd be having a new striker in the squad to assimilate him while we're in Dubai. That was my little sneaky hope, but it hasn't happened, and I sort of understand the reasons why. But I'll only understand them if the summer is what we hope it will be, and the qualities and the gaps are closed, and it's going to be a mini turnover and a mini evolution in the squad because contractually we're going to do it, right? So only at that point will people then say, okay, I know why you waited. You know, so I hope that price is not too big and doesn't affect our future state. One thing Arteta did say, which I thought was quite telling, so what have you been working on in the January break sort of thing if you didn't buy anybody? And he said, we've been working on some renewals. And I'm actually pleased to hear that.
Yeah,
because
it's important.
It's very important. And when you're talking about measuring whether the project is ongoing or not, those renewals, which we can name a few quite quickly that are important, if they are done, then that's an indicator everyone's still on the boat. And I think that's a really important thing. So watching contract renewals over the next 6 months is also something of equal as importance as buying a striker who we're not sure his impact on the actual pitch.
Yeah, of course, because, I mean, we showed last season, just with the players we have on board, we can get very, very close to winning the league. 89 points. I think most seasons, I'd take 89 points and let the chips fall where they may. Hell, I'd take 89 points this season, let chips fall where they may. So the group we have can certainly get us pretty close to our goals, even if I think it needs to be strengthened. Of course it does. But what you don't want is to go get that attacker you needed and lose a William Saliba or a Gabriel or, someone equally important that's equally difficult to replace and recover from. So, yeah, I think that's a big part of it. It is going to be an interesting period for us because now we do get into a time of year where we can focus very squarely on the league and the Champions League. In the league, I think it's just the case of stay in the conversation, right? Stay close and see what Liverpool have. Luck works in weird ways. And if we get fit and if they suddenly don't, things could feel very different. So I think there's enough meat on the bone to at least stay focused. Next week, they're going to have their midweek game against Everton at Goodison, an Everton team that's looking a little bit hard.
That could hurt us, right? If they win that game, then suddenly, that's their sort of game in hand, isn't it? And then
Yep.
there's the gap that we know is sort of there is really
9.
officially there.
Yeah.
And then they're going to think, you know what, there isn't much for us to fall down on now. And so Everton last game at Goodison before they get moved to a new ground next season, they're going to be on tip-top form. So Liverpool, who's managed to overcome these hurdles really, really skillfully, if they overcome that one as well, it could hurt. But if they don't, let's see. Let's see. It's
and the
back
thing
on.
I would say, right, look, I can't see a world where we would win the league without winning at Anfield, which is very, very hard to do. But let's just set that aside and say we win at Anfield. Then even if they win at Everton, it's a 6-point gap. So we need them to drop 6 points between now and May when we go to Anfield. That's really what it is. And we need to keep the gap no bigger than that during that period. If they drop 6 points, we could talk about it. Do I think it's going to happen? No. Do I think ruling it out makes any sense? No. I mean, if that's how you protect yourself, I totally understand it. I know Tim has said he doesn't think we'll do it. I don't think we'll do it either, but I think we're in the conversation. I certainly think, hey, if Saka comes back and they lose Salah, we're all going to be feeling very different about things, right? So let's just see what happens. The Champions League, I think, is very much there for us. I realize when you've just lost 4-0 on aggregate to Newcastle, talking about the Champions League feels a little silly, but I also think we know football is very weird in that, what happened in this Newcastle tie is a unique thing. I sometimes think, Clive, if you look at it, we haven't lost to a Big Six team in 2 years. I sometimes think the big teams suit us in a way because teams that sit deep and counter can sometimes be a real problem for us, but actually the teams that play a bit, like City tried to against us, can get got. So we'll see. There's a lot still to go to. We'll have a pod for patrons tomorrow. I don't think there's much else to cover today unless you have anything else, Clive.
No, just to reiterate your point, we may not have evolved attacking wise enough since last year, but our off the ball play is still really, really good. And the big games require a lot more off the ball play than on the ball play. Where we failed against Newcastle was we didn't do our job in either box. And so we deserve what we got. So take it and we move on. See you in 10 days.
Absolutely. And look, I mean, I think where people are frustrated are going to get their red meat at some point is any game we fail to win because we couldn't find the goal we needed is just going to obviously open old wounds. That's the course we've set for ourselves by not finding the player we needed. So let's hope there's more days where we find 5 goals from 5 goal scorers and we could say who put the ball in the back of the net. But there may be days where we don't, and then we know where the conversation's inevitably going to go back to. I'm excited for that conversation to change when we buy Isak for $190 million in the summer, whatever the heck we do. We'll see. Plenty of time to figure that out. We'll have something for you tomorrow. And then probably a regular schedule next week. Main pod Monday, main pod Thursday. Probably something midweek for patrons, and then we'll get back into things. Also looking at potentially adding a Friday live stream into the mix most weeks, although not this week since there's literally nothing going on. So we'll update you on that as well. Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you, Clive.
Thank you very much.
My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me everywhere again, Gunner. We love you. Who is it, Lester? Yeah, all right, Lester. And we will talk to you after Arsenal 10. Lester, no.